30 hours strapped inside the cockpit of one of the most secretive aircraft ever built. No reclining seat. No warm dinner being wheeled down the aisle. No chance to stretch your legs in a terminal between flights. For the pilots of the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, this is reality. Once they strap in, the cockpit becomes their entire universe. Every meal, every sip of water, every moment of exhaustion, all inside a space no larger than a compact SUV. The B-2 is designed to fly from the heart of America to virtually any corner of the globe without ever landing. That means missions don't last a few hours. They last an entire day, sometimes more than 40 straight hours from takeoff to touchdown. For the two-person crew, that's more time awake in the air than most people spend working in an entire week. And they can't afford a single mistake. Eating, sleeping, even the way you sit in your seat becomes part of survival. There's no catering cart rolling down the aisle with 3 choices of dinner. Instead, everything you consume for the next day and a half has to be carefully planned, packed, and rationed. Think turkey sandwiches, instant oatmeal, sunflower seeds, protein bars, bottles of water, all crammed into a cooler and storage bag no bigger than a backpack. Nothing fancy, just fuel. But the food is only the beginning. These marathon missions are a test of the human body and mind. Staying razor-sharp for 30 straight hours requires more than caffeine or adrenaline. It's about planning down to the smallest detail. When to eat, when to nap, when to stay silent, and when to focus with every ounce of energy you have left. In this video, we're going inside the cockpit of the B-2 to see how pilots survive. How they eat, rest, and push themselves to the absolute limit while flying one of the most advanced war machines on Earth. Flying a B-2 isn't like flying a commercial airliner. It's endurance flying mixed with the pressure of combat. Yes, the aircraft is massive and sleek, but every inch of its design serves one purpose: to deliver stealth and precision across oceans and continents. And endurance is the word that defines it. A long-range mission usually begins at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, the only home of the B-2 fleet. From there, the stealth bomber can be tasked with striking deep into Europe, the Middle East, or even across the Pacific. To get there and back without stopping, crews stay airborne for more than a full day. 30 hours is standard. 40 isn't unheard of. The longest recorded missions have stretched into the brutal range of 44 hours. Think about it, nearly 2 full nights without stepping foot on solid ground. During that time, the pilots must juggle an unrelenting list of responsibilities: fly at high altitude, manage the jet's navigation systems, maintain the stealth profile that makes the B-2 invisible to enemy radar, communicate securely with command, and execute aerial refueling not once, but sometimes 2 or 3 times before the mission is over. Each refueling is a tense ballet in the sky, 2 enormous aircraft connecting in midair, sometimes at night, sometimes in turbulence, with no room for error. And yet, inside the cockpit, comfort is almost non-existent. The 2 pilots sit side by side in a space no wider than a small delivery van. There's no walking aisle, no room to pace. If you want to stretch your legs, you do it while half bent, between your seat and the back wall. Directly behind the cockpit seats lies the so-called living area. But don't imagine anything close to a lounge. It's a tiny section with 3 essentials: a small microwave, a cooler stuffed with meals, and a compact toilet no bigger than a camping setup. That's it. That is your world for the next 30+ hours. The real challenge isn't only in flying the plane, it's in living inside it. Fatigue creeps in slowly and dangerously. Your eyelids grow heavy, your reflexes lag, your brain processes information a split second slower. In an ordinary office job, that just means mistakes on an email. In a B-2, it could mean missing a critical signal or mismanaging a refueling maneuver at 25,000 feet. That's why every detail, what you eat, when you nap, even how you handle stress, becomes part of the mission itself. For these pilots, the cockpit isn't just a workspace, it's a survival chamber. And before a mission ever leaves the runway, they already know exactly what they'll eat, when they'll eat it, and how they'll keep their bodies running for more than a day in the air. When most people imagine preparing for a combat mission, they picture weapons checks, system diagnostics, or hours spent studying flight routes and target data. And all of that is true, but for B-2 pilots, another checklist is just as important: what they're going to eat for the next 30 to 40 hours. Food on a B-2 isn't about taste or variety, it's about survival and performance. Every calorie has a purpose. Meals are selected days, sometimes weeks, before the mission. Pilots don't make those choices alone. They consult with aerospace physiologists and flight surgeons who help design meal plans to keep energy steady, avoid stomach issues, and sharpen mental focus. In the air, food isn't comfort. It's strategy. The first rule is keep it light. Heavy, greasy, or spicy meals may sound satisfying on the ground, but at altitude they can cause drowsiness, bloating, or discomfort in a space where movement is already limited. That's why turkey sandwiches are a staple: lean protein, easy to digest, steady energy. Instant oatmeal is another favorite: warm, filling, and quick to prepare in the microwave behind the cockpit seats. Snacks like sunflower seeds and protein bars are chosen because they release energy slowly, keeping blood sugar consistent without the spike and crash effect of candy or soda. Another principle is the low-residue diet, a plan that minimizes foods that create excess waste in the digestive system. It might not sound glamorous, but when your bathroom is the size of a gym locker, reducing the number of times you need to use it becomes a matter of efficiency. In other words, what you don't eat is just as important as what you do. Timing is just as critical as the menu. Pilots avoid heavy meals right before critical phases such as takeoff, mid-air refueling, or weapons deployment. Instead, they snack in controlled bursts, keeping their bodies fed without overwhelming their systems. It's a marathon strategy: fuel in small doses, spread across the mission, to maintain peak alertness hour after hour. Think of it this way: every bite of food is part of the mission's fuel equation. The aircraft burns jet fuel, the pilots burn calories. Both have to be managed with precision, because in a B-2, a lapse in energy can be just as dangerous as a lapse in fuel. Once the B-2 Spirit leaves the runway, the cockpit becomes a sealed world of discipline and routine. Every action, eating, drinking, stretching, even how you close your eyes, is part of a carefully orchestrated plan. For 30 or more hours, this is home, workplace, and survival capsule all in one. Behind the two side-by-side pilot seats is what the crew jokingly calls the lounge. But don't expect recliners or a place to lie down. The lounge is nothing more than a cooler, a compact microwave, and a tiny toilet. That microwave, though, is worth its weight in gold. It transforms a cold sandwich into something warm, an instant oatmeal packet into a morale boost, and breaks up the monotony of protein bars and seeds. In the middle of an endless ocean crossing, a warm meal is more than food, it's a psychological lift. The daily rhythm inside the cockpit is split into shifts, even though only two pilots share the load. When one is at the controls, monitoring systems, and watching for threats, the other may use the downtime to stretch, eat, or close their eyes for a short nap. But off-duty is never truly off. At any second, turbulence, refueling, or unexpected threats could demand both pilots' full attention. Meal times are deliberately aligned with the mission flow. Large or slow meals happen only during calm stretches of the flight path. Critical phases, like aerial refueling, approaching the target area, or communicating with command, are never interrupted for a snack. During these high-focus moments, pilots might settle for a quick sip of water or a handful of sunflower seeds, just enough to stay alert without distraction. Rest is equally strategic. The B-2 doesn't have a bed, but pilots can slide their seat back or lean against the narrow padded space behind it. Power naps, 15 to 20 minutes at most, can dramatically restore alertness. Longer rests are rare, usually reserved for periods when the aircraft is cruising steadily and threats are minimal. It's less about sleep and more about survival, keeping the brain sharp when fatigue becomes the most dangerous enemy in the sky. Hydration is constant. The cockpit air is dry, and dehydration can set in quietly, leading to headaches or sluggish thinking. Pilots sip water throughout the mission, avoiding the temptation to rely too heavily on caffeine. Coffee and energy drinks are saved for the hardest phases, not for casual sipping. Trash and leftover wrappers are sealed and stored immediately to keep the cabin clean and odor-free, because 30 hours in a confined space with the smell of stale food is the last distraction anyone needs. It may look monotonous from the outside: eat, drink, nap, repeat. But inside, this rhythm is what keeps pilots functioning. In a B-2 mission, the smallest misstep, a late reaction, a drifting focus, can have consequences measured in lives and millions of dollars. That's why life in the cockpit is run with military precision. Flying a B-2 for over a full day isn't just about handling the aircraft, it's about fighting the body's natural urge to shut down. Even the best-trained pilots hit walls of fatigue where their reflexes slow, their focus blurs, and their decision-making falters. In combat aviation, that can't happen, which is why staying awake and alert is treated just as seriously as fuel levels or weapon systems. The first line of defense is strategic eating. Instead of heavy meals that cause energy spikes followed by brutal crashes, pilots graze throughout the mission: protein bars, nuts, sunflower seeds, or half a sandwich at a time. These foods release energy slowly, keeping the brain fed without bogging the body down. Quick bursts of sugar are avoided because a sugar crash at the wrong time could mean losing focus when it's needed most. Caffeine is a tool, but not the main solution. Pilots are careful with it, saving coffee or energy drinks for the hardest phases, like the middle of the night over the Pacific or the final stretch when exhaustion feels overwhelming. Drink too much early in the mission, and it backfires, causing jitters and a crash when they can least afford it. Instead, caffeine is used like a weapon, precisely timed, reserved for when mental sharpness is non-negotiable. The Air Force also has a backup system, fatigue management programs. In extreme cases, under strict medical supervision, pilots may be issued prescription alertness aids like modafinil. These aren't taken lightly, and they're never a replacement for rest. Instead, they bridge the gap when sleep simply isn't possible. But most missions are flown with nothing more than food discipline, hydration, and smart caffeine timing. The other weapon against fatigue is the power nap. Even 15 or 20 minutes of sleep can reset mental clarity. One pilot rests while the other remains fully in control, always ensuring the bomber is never unattended. These micronaps are timed for stable stretches of the flight, when navigation is steady and the chance of sudden emergencies is lowest. For many pilots, these short naps are the difference between landing sharp and landing dangerously drained. And perhaps the most underrated factor is routine itself. The act of sticking to a rhythm, snacking at specific intervals, hydrating regularly, trading off responsibilities, keeps the body from spiraling into exhaustion. Fatigue can't be avoided, but it can be managed. And in the cockpit of a B-2, managing fatigue is as mission-critical as managing fuel. Inside the stealth machine, staying awake isn't about sheer willpower. It's about using science, strategy, and discipline to keep the human brain operating as smoothly as the jet systems. Because if the pilots lose focus, the aircraft's billion-dollar technology won't save the mission. To understand just how demanding a B-2 mission really is, it helps to walk through one from start to finish. Imagine a 37-hour assignment, longer than most people are awake in 3 straight days. It begins well before dawn at Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri. Pilots arrive hours before takeoff, not just for the technical briefings, but for final checks on their meal and hydration plan. Food is packed into resealable bags labeled by mission hours, hours 1 to 5, hours 6 to 10, and so on, so they never have to think about what to eat when fatigue sets in. It's all pre-sorted, just like ammunition is loaded for a weapon. Hours 1 to 5. Take off and climb to cruising altitude. The first few hours are busy, navigating out of US airspace, syncing with command, preparing for the first aerial refueling. Meals here are kept light, maybe half a sandwich or a protein bar. Hydration is steady but measured. Too much water early means too many bathroom breaks during high-stress phases. Hours 6 to 12, the rhythm settles in. One pilot takes the controls while the other stretches, eats, or sneaks in a short power nap. This is when the microwave gets its first workout, warming oatmeal or a pre-made sandwich. Aerial refueling often happens here, requiring total focus from both pilots. Connecting with a tanker in midair, sometimes at night, sometimes in turbulence, is one of the most stressful maneuvers of the mission. Hours 13 to 20, the strain of time begins to show. Shoulders ache, legs stiffen, the cabin feels smaller. Pilots rotate responsibilities more often to stay sharp. Snacks like nuts or sunflower seeds keep blood sugar stable without making the body sluggish. Conversation between the two becomes part of the alertness strategy, keeping each other mentally engaged. Hours 21 to 28, the hardest part. Fatigue hits hardest during the overnight hours, especially when flying over the vast, silent stretches of ocean. This is when carefully rationed caffeine makes its appearance. Coffee or an energy drink, timed for maximum impact. Rest breaks become shorter and more frequent, with 15-minute naps acting as lifelines. Every detail matters. A sloppy mistake here could undo more than 20 hours of flawless flying. Hours 29 to 33, final approach to the target area or the completion of mission tasks. At this stage, there's no eating, no breaks, just full, undivided attention. Both pilots are locked in, managing stealth systems, navigation, and communications with precision. It's the sharpest focus of the entire mission, right when the body is begging for sleep. Hours 34 to 37, the long road home. One last aerial refueling often takes place before the descent back into Missouri. Physically, the pilots are running on fumes. Shoulders are sore, eyes sting, and the exhaustion feels heavy. But there's no relaxation yet. The landing, post-flight debrief, and aircraft checks still demand focus. Only once the B-2 is parked and powered down can the crew finally step out of their airborne prison. This cycle, eating in small bursts, hydrating strategically, resting in micronaps, timing caffeine perfectly, shows how survival in the cockpit is just as important as flying the plane. Without it, the human side of the mission would collapse long before the aircraft ever touched down. The B-2 Spirit is often described as one of the most advanced machines ever built. But in reality, every mission is a partnership, half technology, half human endurance. And without the discipline of its pilots, that billion-dollar bomber is just another aircraft waiting on the runway. A B-2 mission is more than just a long flight. It's a test of human endurance wrapped inside one of the most advanced machines ever created. The aircraft itself can stay airborne for days, but the pilots inside are not machines. They're human beings, fighting fatigue, rationing food, hydrating carefully, and stealing minutes of rest wherever possible. In the end, mission success doesn't just depend on stealth technology or precision weapons. It depends equally on discipline, planning, and the raw endurance of the crew. Think about it. 30 to 40 hours strapped into a cockpit with barely enough space to stretch, relying on turkey sandwiches and oatmeal instead of hot meals, taking power naps instead of real sleep. It's a marathon in the sky, and the finish line is often half a world away. If you respect the grit it takes to complete one of these missions, drop a airplane's salute emoji in the comments. Be honest, could you handle 30 hours inside the cockpit, or would you tap out halfway through? Because at the end of the day, these pilots remind us of something important. Even the most advanced bomber on Earth only matters if the humans inside can endure the mission. Every sip of water, every carefully timed nap, every protein bar, they're not extras. They're survival tactics. Without them, the mission wouldn't just be difficult, it would be impossible. If you learned something new today, hit the like button, share this video with a friend, and subscribe for more aviation stories that show the human side of the most powerful machines in the sky. And if you want to support this channel directly, consider joining our crew. You'll get loyalty badges, priority replies, and help us bring more hidden aviation stories to light. Thanks for watching. And remember, when you're flying a B-2 Spirit, there's no drive-through on the way home.